and welcome. So today what we're going to talk about is a little bit more on my last video in regards to depression. So basically just little things on how we can work to improve our mental health and how we can do this within our own communities ourselves. So as I'm sure we are all aware now, physical activity helps combat depression. But thanks to many big companies using it as a marketing tool, it's easy to struggle to understand how it helps and how we need to implement the initiatives to help. A study looking at papers from 1980 to 2017 found that physical activity does help, but the subjects ultimately need to want to take part in the physical activity initiative that is being implemented. So this just reiterates my point that it's not always this go hard, go home mentality. You can't just simply say to somebody, go and be active and you'll be cured. Because if this is what we're trying to tell people and then ultimately they aren't cured through doing the physical activity because they don't enjoy it and they ultimately stop, they are then going to be in a worse mental state than when they began. This means we need to start young, teaching kids that physical activity isn't about sport and competition, but it's about just moving and getting the body active for health reasons. UK Active are currently doing this, obviously with restrictions in place. They're doing it all online. They're using athletes from different organisations to come together to put home physical activity workouts for individuals and families to do. And it's not about being the best athlete. They use the athletes, but then to show that it's not necessarily about having to be the best athlete in the world. It is just about that moving and getting active and getting things done, getting the body flowing. It's not just about kids either. For adults, one initiative is Men v Fat, which is a football initiative, playing football. Basically, it's easy to look at that and go, well, it's just for my physical health. But as, again, in previous videos we have discussed, physical and mental health are often interlinked. The study found that those that are depressed aren't likely to seek professional help, and those that are, only half of them are seen to benefit from this help. Whether that be because they're having to self-medicate, and as we know from with depression, that can make us more forgetful. So if we're having to remember to take medication, again, like say if we're depressed, we can be forgetting to do this, so that can be a hindrance and affect us then. And also, we may not have access to any initiatives put in place. So our area may have had budget cuts and things just cut from that area, so we don't have access to it. It may be too far away. Again, that's interlinked with that one. We may not be able to afford to travel and various things like that. So again, Joe, we know what we need to be doing, but a lot of the times it's just that we don't have the things there and in place ready. So we know that those that are depressed have lower levels of physical activity, and we know that physical activity can help those that are depressed. So what do we need to do, and how can we use this information and this evidence-based information? So basically, starting young is the ideal scenario, Joe. Teach kids young why we're doing physical activity, why physical activity is important, and why it is important to have these support groups. So again, it's not just the physical activity, it's having the support groups talking about things. Obviously, starting young is the ideal scenario, Joe. If we set up why we're doing physical activity and set up these support groups for the children, we are then, prevention rather than cure is always going to be better. But that does not mean that we give up on adults. We can still do something. There's always something we can do. What can we do? So we can utilise friend groups, talking to each other. As I've said in previous videos, women are more likely to think about suicide, but less likely to actually go through with it. And this is because they have those support groups. And it doesn't need to be a professional body or structured government organisation. Just talking to each other, talking amongst friends, getting things off our chest. This is what helping. And as I said there, the evidence is there to support this. girls have better support groups around them, more likely to talk about things, therefore less likely to actually go through with something that is ultimately irreversible if successful, which is the worst case scenario. We do not want to be getting to that point. So people, if you're part of a sporting group, a football group, talk to each other, talk about things, talk about how your day's gone. And I don't mean in this breaking down in tears and holding and hugging each other, this overly sensitive mindset. I don't mean it in that. Just if you're at footy training that evening, or at the gym, or at dance class, Joey, if your boss or whatever, someone's annoyed you at work, talk about it. Talk about that emotion. Why is it annoyed you? Why is it doing this? Why are they doing it? Get it off your chest. Talk to one another. Then we're not sitting at home or wherever we are, dwelling on it, thinking about it, getting into our own heads. It's that, that venting. You're counselling one another then. Saying things, we're all quick to say, I'll be there for you, and actually mean it. If your friend, you can see your friend struggling, ask them, how are you? And actually mean it, not just, how are you, as in a hello. Say, actually, how are you? And again, I'm not meaning to the point where we're having to break down and cry and hug each other and hold each other. Just, how are you? Say, work was a bit annoying. This happened, that happened. Oh, right, yeah. I had the same, blah, 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 blah. You're venting, you're getting things off your chest. It's as simple as this. We don't need these big, overly expensive, overly fancy, structured government plans. Like I say, the evidence is there. The studies are there to back it up. So we can do this. We can all talk to each other and form support groups and support bubbles like this. It doesn't need to be something coming from government or official and professional. Like I say, obviously lockdown is a hindrance at the minute, but we can do things online. I'm sure now we're at the stage where we're allowed to meet one person outdoors, socially distanced. Walking your dogs, if you don't like sport, it doesn't need to be sport. Walking groups with your friends, dog walking groups, literally anything that implements some form of group structure where we're talking, support system, and then if we can, some form of physical activity. And like I say, it's teaching. We don't need it to be physical activity as in structured set sports and competition and beating each other and being better than one another. Literally just getting moving, anything that is active, anything that is getting the body moving. And like I say, that and these support groups, talking to one another, a dog walking group or a walking group amongst a group of friends, very, very cheap, very, very cheap. Doesn't have to be set up and overly structured, but the results we can get as the evidence is the most important thing. The evidence is there to prove this works. We don't need these overly fancy things. And again, so like I say, with football clubs, so if you're in a football club, if you can set up an ambassador, if someone can do this for the club, if not, like I say, it doesn't need to be a set thing. Just talking whilst you're training, whilst you're doing your warm-up, whilst you're running round. The little tiny things, all these little things add up. And it's things we look now, we think we need this, again, as I've just mentioned, we think we need this overly complex, expensive initiative put in place to help us, but we don't. We just need to replace the things that we used to get. We used to talk to one another. We used to do things in communal organisations and vent between one another, whether that be even just in the pub. I know that's not physical activity, but we would go to the pub and we would talk and vent. And even before lockdown, like I'm talking about years and years ago, when people would, you get your proper men, if you will, go into but they would vent to each other. Obviously, the alcohol is detrimental and it is a depressant, but as well as that, they were then venting and talking. So anything where, if you're not able to be active, if you can get a support group where you meet up at a cafe or meet up at a certain location and just sit down and talk. Anything, these support groups are what we need to basically replace. Like I say, in the past we would have had these things. We were more communal, we were more focused on one another, whereas now we are very individual mindset driven. And that's no individual, I'm not having a go at individuals there either, the way the world is, and we've all got bills to pay and things like this. So now we're having to put back and think about what we're missing, So now, like I say, it's those support groups. In the past, we would have had them, now we don't. So now this is why we have to actively work to re-implement them into our lifestyles. And again, like I say, the evidence is there to prove this. It doesn't need to be overly fancy, overly structured. Get out, get walking, get moving. Like I say, even just get to a cafe, support groups, talk to one another. Human emotions are normal. We're meant to feel happy, we're meant to feel sad, we're meant to feel all of the spectrum of emotions. It's not just about being in one state or the other. Talk about these emotions, why we're feeling a certain way. Like I say, just, if you've had a bad day, just say it to somebody. If you've had a good day, say that to somebody. Get these things off our chests, talk to each other. And then also, the people we're talking to, they may know, oh, I'm feeling like that. Oh, I was actually struggling to talk out, but now you've said it, I feel more comfortable in doing so. So we all have a responsibility to help one another. We can all use ourselves to help one another. It is just about talking and sharing our experiences, and then we will realise we are not all living this individual life astray from everybody else, but we actually all encounter the same daily struggles. Well, good luck, guys. Please like and subscribe. As we get more subscribers, I am going to start doing some giveaways, home workout plans and video plans like that, and also for people that may be local or a lot closer to Blackpool, we'll be giving away some free memberships as well as those numbers bump up. So get liking and subscribing, guys, and get out there talking to each other. Get moving, get talking.